HIPAA, Privacy, and Security Rules by Hannah Lowell. We're going to review a case study about a former UCLA health system employee who became the first person in the nation to be sentenced to federal prison for violating the HIPAA Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, also known as HIPAA. Yu-Ping Zhou accessed patient records without proper authorization, which is in violation of HIPAA regulations. The intention of HIPAA is to protect the privacy of health information and limits access by others. The question is, did Zhou have a legitimate right to view records as part of his normal course of employment? Yu-Ping Zhou was employed as a researcher, and based on his assignment, he may have needed to access records. A variety of options are in place for the use of medical records for research purposes. There are several parameters under which Zhou could legitimately access health information. HIPAA allows the use of personal health information for research under any of the following circumstances. The patient has provided specific written permission, or an independent review board has granted a waiver of authorization of patient permission because the risk is determined to have minimal impact, or PHI has been de-identified, which means personal information has been stripped from the record before being given to the researcher. This would include identifiers such as name, date of birth, and other indicative data. UCLA may have had patient authorization to use the information, and the following process followed. A description of what data from the record will be used, names or classes of employees who will be using the information, a research completion date provided, a statement that the participant can withdraw authorization, language that information may be disclosed to other organizations and then is no longer protected, and information that individuals may copy or review their records. Waived authorization. Authorization by HIPAA permits using personal health information without consent of the patient with following criteria. This would again be as approved by an internal review board. The review board would determine that the use of PHI is no more than minimal risk. The waiver will not negatively impact privacy rights. The project could not be done without a waiver. The project could not be done without personal health information, and a workable plan to protect identifiers is in place. This proposal includes information on how personal health information will be destroyed or retained. Limited data set with data use agreement is another method by which researchers can access information. Zhou could have had access to records with a limited data set in which identifiable information exists, but the set is used for that specific information, and safeguards are in place to protect that data. Limited data sets cannot contain names, street addresses, phone numbers, email addresses, social security numbers, or licenses. The agreement needs to stipulate who the intended recipient is and how the data will be used and protected. This becomes the next question of, in what ways could UCLA have discovered the infractions? UCLA likely had a security compliance plan in place, along with a security officer to evaluate electronic systems and monitor for excessive accessing of information. Audit trails behind the scenes would have identified the unusual amount of access by Zhou. The current tools can be rule-based. So, for example, someone is accessing a record above a certain number of times for a baseline, such as any access of more than 20 records a day triggers a flag. Or they could be behavior-based, where information is identified by the team that an employee has suddenly accessed an amount of records above the normal course of daily transactions that they typically provide. Audit trails consist of information that identifies who has accessed a system, when it was accessed, and what operations were performed. Joe was likely able to access the information through his role-based privileges as a researcher. When he was identified as an employee who was losing his position, security measures should have been put into place to reduce his access or terminate his access to limit security breaches.